Welcome to Moments in History, where we unravel the story of Helen of Troy, from her remarkable beauty that launched 1,000 ships to her abduction that sparked the Trojan War. This is a story filled with love and war. But what made this war so significant, and how did it end? Stay tuned to find out the real story of Helen of Troy and what caused the destruction of an entire city. So why did the Greeks fight a 10-year-long war? And was it all for the love of a woman? Let's find out. 1. Helen's beauty. Helen was the queen of Sparta, a state in Greece, and the wife of King Menelaus. Greek mythology describes Helen as the Greeks' jewel at the time. Any people who got to see her were considered lucky, and to your surprise, all the people who saw her fell in love with her instantly. She was known as the goddess of beauty in Greek mythology. Her dark red lips and light blue eyes made the best combination to enhance her face. You must have heard this phrase. Helen of Troy launched 1,000 ships, which means that Helen's beauty was so great that it caused a great military expedition, the Trojan War. 2. Helen's abduction. The story of Helen of Troy begins with her abduction by Paris, a prince of Troy, from her husband Menelaus, the king of Sparta. This event leads to the Trojan War, which lasts for 10 years and involves numerous battles and casualties. The initial event sets off the entire story, which is the abduction of Helen by Paris. Paris, who came to Troy, fell in love with Helen, and Helen also claimed to be in love with him. The two royalties spent a lot of time together and made a huge decision. People are free to love each other, but for a married woman to fall in love with a guy, and for such royalty to marry a prince of another nation, was like trying to provoke a war on their part. Due to their actions, Menelaus was outraged by this and sought revenge. He enlisted the help of his brother, King Agamemnon of Mycenae, and other Greek kings to wage war against Troy and started the Trojan War. 3. The gods' involvement. In Greek mythology, the gods often meddle in the affairs of mortals. The story of Helen of Troy is no exception, with many of the key events being influenced or caused by divine intervention. For example, the goddess Athena was on the side of the Greeks, and she aided them in battle by providing strategic advice to their leaders, such as Odysseus, and by granting them strength and courage. The god Apollo, on the other hand, was on the side of the Trojans and helped them by sending plagues and pestilences to weaken the Greek army. I think the god involvement in the Trojan War caused so much destruction in the outcome. The gods made their involvement in the Trojan War because they took sides of either Greeks or Trojans. They had their belief and agendas, and they often intervened to help their favorite heroes to ensure their side's victory. Overall, the gods' involvement in the Trojan War helped to shape the course of events and influence the outcome of the war. 4. Hector's influence. Hector was a Trojan prince, a brother of Paris, and a key figure in the Trojan War. He was considered a Trojan War hero, and what he did was pretty impressive. When Paris introduced Helen to Hector as his wife, rather than outraging at him, Hector became very supportive of his brother and did not ask him to return Helen. Maybe the Trojan War would have been prevented if Hector had thought the other way and convinced Paris to return Helen, but surely there is no guarantee on the outcome. Paris chose Helen over the objection of his family, which provoked the Trojan War. Hector's tragic death at the hands of Achilles was a turning point in the war. His demise devastated the Trojans and gave the Greeks a renewed sense of confidence. Hector's loss was felt deeply by the Trojan people, and his memory continued to inspire them throughout the remainder of the war. 5. The Trojan War. Now here is the main event and outcome of all other factors. From Helen's abduction to Hector's influence, the Trojan War is one of the most famous wars in Greek mythology, and it covers many interesting topics like Helen's beauty and the gods' involvement. It is one of my favorite stories because it's epic and timeless. The Greeks made a plan to infiltrate Troy. They constructed a wooden horse, which was the Trojan horse. I'm sure you have heard of this. The horse was a strategic masterpiece that helped the Greeks win the Trojan War. the Greeks left the horse outside the gate of Troy. Believing the horse was a gift, the guards led it inside. Little did they know, the horse was hollow, and the Greek army was inside the wooden horse. That night, the Greek soldiers emerged from the horse and opened the gates of Troy, allowing the rest of the Greek army to enter the city and conquer it from inside. The Trojan horse allowed the Greeks to sneak past the Trojan defenses and infiltrate the city, which they had been unable to do for 10 years. The Trojan War started, causing the death of Paris, his brother Hector, and other key figures. But even after the death of Paris, the Trojan War continued for years until the Greeks annihilated most of the Trojan citizens. And it ended with the fall of Troy, resulting in Greek victory. Helen was taken back to Sparta, and she reunited with Menelaus, the king of Sparta, and they spent the rest of their time together until death. According to a variant of the story, Helen, in widowhood after Menelaus' death, was driven out by her stepsons and fled to Rhodes, where she was hanged by Rhodian queen Pollux. 6. Homecoming challenges. The homecoming challenges were the events that took place after the war and before Helen's death. According to Greek mythology, after the war, Greeks sailed back home, but it was not the same for all of them. Many Greeks had to face problems on their way back home and had to face the long journey. For example, the hero Odysseus encountered many obstacles on his journey back to Ithaca, including his visit to the land of the dead, encounters with monsters like Polyphemus and Scylla, and a long stay with sorceress Circe. Not only the challenges during the homecoming, but due to the distrust and fear, the Greeks had to face many consequences after their return in Greece. Many heroes faced betrayal, revenge, and political upheaval in their own kingdoms. The mythological accounts of what happened after the Trojan War vary, but they generally depict a world that was changed by epic conflicts. The Trojan War also had a lasting impact on Greek mythology and culture. The war was the subject of many epic poems and other works of literature, and it remains a popular topic in modern culture. The Trojan War also helped to establish the cultural and political dominance of the Greeks in the ancient Mediterranean world, and it played an important role in shaping the mythology and history of the region. In my opinion, the war was one of the greatest and most incredible wars of Greek mythology. Although the story of Helen of Troy is a mythological tale, it is also rooted in historical events and cultural practices of ancient Greece. By examining the historical context of the story, we can gain a deeper understanding of the themes and messages it conveys. For example, the story reflects the ancient Greek values of honor, courage, and loyalty, as well as the role of women in society. So there you have it, the real story of Helen of Troy. Her beauty was the catalyst that started one of the most epic and legendary wars in history, the Trojan War. Helen's abduction by Paris, her lover, from her husband, King Menelaus, resulted in a 10-year war between the Greeks and Trojans. The gods played a major role in the war, with their favoritism toward one side or the other shaping the outcome. Hector, a Trojan prince, had a great influence on the war, but was ultimately killed by Achilles. The war ended with the Greeks emerging victorious thanks to the strategic Trojan horse, and Helen was reunited with Menelaus. The story of Helen of Troy has inspired countless works of art, literature, and film, and remains a timeless tale of love, war, and tragedy. I hope you liked this episode of Moments in History. If you want to learn more about juicy events that took place in history, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to like the video because it encourages us to bring more videos for you. What do you think about all the major events that led to the Trojan War? And don't you think the Trojan horse was a great strategy on the Greeks' part? Which side would you have supported if you were in the war? Let us know your honest opinion in the comments. And have a great day.